Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Enjoy Your Stay, written by Dark Prince 010. 3 years ago, I was part of the Containment Analysis Detachment sent by the Council to monitor progress on the humans' front of the war. We had containment analysis for the other member races of the Council, but due to an accounting issue and a bit of a mix-up on initial deployment, we were approximately 5 years behind schedule in assigning an observer for the humans specifically. We've all heard of their progress in the war, at least before we understood why. But suffice to say that all we were receiving were the containment report numbers of how successfully they had been at pushing back and holding a line against the consuming hive. The hive at the time had triggered into a swarm, something the Council had known but not had the resources to prepare for until it happened. I know my people's leadership would like to extend thanks to all those who cooperated and coordinated in order to help minimize the consuming hive's reach, as well as make diplomatic outreach efforts to try and establish communications with the hive once the peak of their swarming hormone surge had faded. Unfortunately, the human recorded in the war was a troubled and mixed legacy, as I know the purpose of this hearing is to hash out given the new evidence that has arisen. When I first arrived, they were ecstatic to show me the containment numbers, double-digit percentages, and high ones at that, 75, 80, 85, and even 90 to 95% containment of swarms across their sectors. There were, of course, outlying colony worlds that had not received any special attention, but everywhere the humans had focused their efforts, they'd been a success far in excess of any of our other fronts across the swarm's spread. I believe the only closest contemporaries of the time were the Ortendu warriors, whose battle clans had managed to secure a high 40s in containment. I believe 45 to 47% containment in isolated pockets on their worlds. The representative the humans assigned to me, a scientist by the name of Artemis, had been very eager to discuss with me how things were going on the other fronts of the war, but I noticed almost immediately a distinct reluctance to go into details on how the humans had dealt with the incursions on their space. From what I had been able to piece together from discussions over the coming weeks, humans would usually drop a battle group, something not uncommon for any of the member species of the Council, but then usually withdraw after only a short time. However, they were reporting vastly successful containments on the front from what I could tell after they had fully abandoned it. I had asked Artemis about this, and they had been somewhat reluctant to divulge further information. Of course, my entire task and role was to help monitor and audit the humans' efforts. So I did my best to ensure I was not deterred and continued following up on the line of questioning. Piece by piece, I found that the human battle groups were less of an attacking force and more of an installation and security force for installation groups. Again, when I asked what they were installing, I was given the maddening runaround. I began to suspect that Artemis knew that the humans' actions may have gone from towing the line of wartime conduct to overstepping. But even I do not know the full horror of what they had put together. The linchpin of it came when I insisted upon attending alongside a human battle force. They were going to retake a small airless vacuum moon that apparently had a trace of mineral that the consuming hive was seeking out. The battle group landed, and with much gunfire and bombing, a landing zone was cleared for the forces to land. As they established a perimeter, I could see dropships coming in to leave enormous structures, each fully the size of a battleship, but without any sort of weapons or other installations within. In fact, the scans I ran indicated that these were mostly hollow, a sort of slatted deck layout, but without any visible rooms that I could see, barring some small irregularities near the center of each structure. Finally, Artemis, who was accompanying me in this strike force, could no longer evade my questions and revealed that these were traps intended to combat the consuming hive. I wasn't sure what they meant by traps, as these appeared to be passive rather than something active like triggered gun emplacements or minefields ready for activation. Artemis pulled up a schematic and pointed out to me as enormous doors fell away on either side of each of these structures. In the center was a carefully crafted concentration of that some trace mineral that the consuming hive was seeking on this world. I realized that this would create a lure, bringing in all of the hive's warriors, on those sensitive enough to detect the mineral with their antennas from all over the planet. They would be drawn to attempt to retrieve the bait that the humans had laid. Understanding the bait, I continued to press Artemis. Where was the trap then? The thing that killed them? Artemis shook their head and said, "No, we just trap them. We don't kill them. We just pull them in, keep them there, and then let time take its course." They pointed to the entire interior of the structure, which I now noticed was covered in a yellow-brown opaque substance. I sought to retrieve a sample of it, but Artemis pulled me away sharply, indicating the warning tape and the barriers that had been erected as the crews were putting away from the nearest edges. "Don't touch that, or else it'll take weeks of solvent applications to free you," they warned. My eyes widened, realizing that this was intended to immobilize whatever hive member unwillingly trod onto it, but do nothing else to harm them. "Yeah," said Artemis regretfully. "Our initial scientific proposals had noticed that the insect-consuming hive warriors strongly resemble giant and monstrous versions of the common insect pests that we have back on our home world. The line of thought was, if you can use a roach motel for regular roaches, why not just build a really big roach motel for really big roaches?" Now I hear the hubbub. I acknowledge the uproar in this chamber. The idea had been implemented and put into place due to human ignorance of hive physiology. While it is true that this was effective at immobilizing the hive, my understanding is that the human roaches had a lifespan measured in days, perhaps weeks at most. Humans, as I later clarified with Artemis to their horror, had assumed much the same about the consuming hive, perhaps a month at most of tortured starvation and dehydration before finally expiring. This had been raised as a concern by the fractions of ethicists within the human ranks, but these concerns had been overridden as a matter of planetary security, silenced in order to, as they put it, finally win the war with those damn bugs. What the human scientists had been unaware of was that the hive warriors have battle stasis that they go into involuntarily when unable to consume, meaning that a single warrior's lifespan can stretch thousands, perhaps even 10,000 years. As a result, all of the trapped members of the consuming hive were still quite alive within their prisons, slowly but inexorably suffocating, starving, and dying day by day. Unfortunately, the adjacent presence of the so many other warriors also meant their hormone surges continued to ravage them at levels of normal consuming hive swarm warrior would never experience normally. Furthermore, the solvents to counteract this adhesive were not thoroughly tested on hive warriors due to the lack of biological samples on the outbreak of the war, and so they were equally unaware that said solvents would dissolve their exoskeletons and lead to a painful and even more torturous demise well before the adhesive was neutralized. Additionally, I would like to acknowledge the efforts by humanity to rectify this mistake. In particular, while it was widely derided as an ineffective propaganda move at the time, it should be recognized that multiple human corporations, including Pramble, Unicola, and Johnson & Kellogg, donated millions of credits worth of non-corrosive surfactants to try and help clean and free the hive warriors. So, I wish to submit this testimony to the tribunal, not necessarily in defense of humanity, but to at least acknowledge that this misstep was torture and a crime against sentience that was born from ignorance rather than malice. However, the next misstep was born from pure, foolish arrogance when compared to their own historical records. As we recently learned, the late consuming hive queen, she of tremendous progeny, had left their prime nest when she learned of their offspring's ensnarement. Upon arrival at Go-Rhine 3, she had attempted to remove the adhesive by consuming it, and while initial observations had reported that this appeared to be surprisingly successful, it appears the adhesive was indigestible, and the queen soon expired from internal blockages. The humans at the shared colony of Go-Rhine 3 had complained that the central human command of the enormous dead queen, as apparently her half-mile-long abdomen and thorax, had begun to rot, excreting hazardous compounds and an overwhelming odor. Without consulting the scientific councils of their other member races who also shared the colony, the human central command instead proposed to the leadership of the colony that they were fully confident in their ability to help dispose of the consuming hive queen. One offhand comment even declared that the numerous native scavenger species on Go-93 would be well fed by the disposal strategy, something that should have raised concerns amongst the other politicians, but went unmentioned at the time. Instead, with only tacit approval, the human military detachment placed and detonated a neutron warhead immediately beneath the dead queen. While their records show that anticipated yield would have been within the unreasonably optimistic safety zone, records also show concerns from their own scientific cadre that the Queen had registered as having high levels of neutron-active compounds. These concerns, like the ethicists before, were thoroughly ignored. The resulting blast nearly destroyed the colony of Go-93, with the combined total casualty count of near 300 individuals across the various member species. The compound explosion from the reactor compounds within the Queen was insufficient to fully render the corpse pieces to a uniformly fine consistency that scavengers could consume, and the irradiation meant that a few who did venture out to eat the scattered flesh soon expired. Larger pieces were also responsible for much of the damage to the colony, including the large mess of iron skull that crushed the offices of the unfortunate Prime Minister Gyrop. The blast scar is still visible from orbit around Gurine 3, along with the ring of ejected effluents that managed to make it into low orbit and forever escape further decay. I believe the locals have nicknamed this Ring of the Stupid Apes, and it has proven to be quite inconvenient for space traffic passing through due to staining and odor concerns. The comprehensive check into human historical record shows that this is not the first or even the 10th time humans have unsuccessfully attempted to dispose of large carcasses via ineffective explosions. Their actions at Go-93 have decimated the immigration appeal and production of the colony and led to the approval of tight controls over human military and weapons usage at all other shared colony sites. Between the ignorance of the humans leading to an ongoing humanitarian crisis as we continue to find solutions to free the now docile consuming hive members, and their arrogance leading to the soiling of an entire planet with the defilement of a member of alien royalty, it is clear what has led to the motion to eject humanity we are discussing today. I, speaking on behalf of my own species, wish to voice my support for this motion. Both of the above faults were sourced in the unceasing human desire for haste, and both could have been avoided with caution, safeguards, and heeding of scientific and ethical concerns. Humanity wants to help. Under no circumstances allow them to do so. End of story. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters: Bushmaster 117, Casper Arnholtz, Draxzoon WRE, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, John Carrington, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.